I'm Dan Galusha, and welcome to another edition of Dan's Fishing Tales. It's going to be a little bit different today. I've decided to start something different. For 14 years, Dan's Fishing Tales used to be on the radio. It was broadcast on WRMJ FM 102 in Aledo, Illinois. And during that time, we had a lot of different shows and a lot of different guests, even Virgil Ward. Well, what I have decided to do is to start airing some of these on my YouTube channel. We're going to run photos along with the radio show. And to kick it off, I was debating on this. What should I use as my first one? Well, my old buddy Johnnie Crain, we lost him in July 2019. Just a wonderful guy. Everybody loved him. A little skinny guy, actually. A rich, deep bass voice. In fact, he performed the theme song to the Dan's Fishing Tales show. He also wrote the music. I did the words. But anyway, that was one of the parts of it. We traveled around. We did seminars together. Had a ball doing the seminars. For a while, it was a trio along with Don Banning. And then we ended up as a duo. And we had a great time, kind of like Johnny said one time when we were in the Unidome in Cedar Falls, Iowa. He told the audience, hey, we're going to let you ask a lot of questions. We can do it whatever way you want. We can talk about what we already know about, or we can answer your questions. He said, I'll tell you this, that when we give you an answer, you won't know if we're telling you the truth or not. Well, that was Johnny. That's the type of humor he had, and just a great, great guy, great family guy. Like they've said about so many people, he'd give the shirt off his back to Johnny would. He was great with kids, did a lot for them, started the Muscatine Kids Bass chapter, I think it was, or something like that. Anyway, he did a lot of kids casting events, ones that he worked with me on some of mine, and I worked with him on some of his. But instead of going into all of this, because I got so many stories about him, why don't we air this show? And it was in 2004. In fact, it won the first place AGLOW Award for radios that year. And it was something different. We were out fishing, and we decided to do a show. And and Johnny even brings up the fact that a raccoon walks across. You'll be hearing it all. So just sit back and enjoy the radio show with Johnnie Crain as my guest. I'm Dan Galusha, and welcome to another edition of Dan's Fishing Tales. In just a moment, we're going to have my old buddy Johnnie Crain on with us, and we're going to be talking about what we were doing this week fishing. And so stay with us, and we'll be back right after these messages. Okay, Johnny, as I told everybody, we're going to talk about what we were doing fishing, and boy, we almost didn't do anything, did we?
Oh, we got off to kind of a slow start, as usual, but you know, sometimes you just got to hang tough and try to figure out what's going on. I think we both had preconceived notions of what was going to happen today, and it didn't happen.
You're not kidding, because everything was right. The water quality, it was perfect. Actually, jerkworm should have been it for the bass, shouldn't they?
That's what I had tied on. I had a jerkworm on. I noticed you did too, two different colors. And that should have been the thing, because we could see the bass in the shallow waters, in the weed beds and stuff. They just wouldn't react to it at all.
No, in fact, folks, what we ended up doing is going to spinnerbaits. Now, I'm not saying just pulling the old spinnerbait along. We were fishing those spinnerbaits like we would have in early spring. I mean, very early spring, as far as slow rolling, pumping up and down, letting the blade flutter down, or if you're in late fall, something of that sort. That's how they were hitting, weren't they?
Well, we were actually having to, what I would call finesse fish, a spinnerbait, you know. Slow it and yo-yo it up and down and pretty much fish it like you would under really tough conditions, like you would a worm or something else. The things that should have worked didn't work, and I know you for sure were using a very small spinnerbait.
Yes, I was. I was using what's called a baby wedge. Now, that's an 1/8 ounce spinnerbait. Now, I think Johnny was actually just trying to hit him in the head with the one he had.
I was using a full 1/2 ounce titanium Terminator spinnerbait, and then caught a couple of fish on it. But the smaller bait definitely was the key, and also the other key was fishing the drop-offs, knowing where the drop-offs were. The fish were laying right on the edge, a lot of them. Once in a while they'd hit as soon as it hit the water, and if it didn't, then you might as well bring it out and start yo-yoing it back real slow because you wasn't going to get anything on a standard retrieve.
In fact, when they did hit right after it hit the water, that was usually a shallow area that was close to deep drop-off.
Yeah, it was. They were hit right on the edge, and I noticed 2 or 3 of your fish actually followed it out from the shallows into the deep before they would take it. And that, that kind of throws you off too, because you think if they're shallow, they'd be feeding in the shallows, but they were waiting till it was halfway back to the boat before they'd take it.
In fact, I know one of them there, I think he hit it in the shallows, and I was actually yo-yoing it. That fish kept a hold of that thing the whole doggone time until I got the boat, and I told you, I said, I think I got a fish on.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. It was difficult to tell if you had a fish or not. I did the same thing on a plastic lizard. I had a lizard on a drop shot rig and was fishing it, and like that one, I didn't really know I had a fish till I got it almost to the boat, and then it got off because I didn't get the hook set properly.
Yeah, I noticed that because the lizards, that's another thing. We were talking about the jerkworms should work. Lizards should definitely work this time of year.
Yeah, you would think those females would be on the nest, or at least preparing the nests, and the lizard is supposed, usually at this time of year is very deadly bait. But I think I just had the one hit on the lizard, and I'm still a little confused as to why the spinnerbait worked and the worms and jerkworms and stuff didn't work. And I tried crankbait too, and I did catch some fish on a crankbait, but those were right on the lip, the lip of the drop off, just like where they were hitting the spinnerbait. Once I came out of the shallows and the bait started to dive, they'd take it. Otherwise, no good.
Yeah, in fact, they seemed like they'd hit on the, when we're talking about drop-offs, they were on the outer side of the weed edges, too, because there's a weed line along there.
Yeah, you could actually see the weeds, and then when your bait cleared the weeds and maybe came 2 or 3 feet past the weeds, that seemed to be when we were getting a majority of the strikes. And we had, I would say, 50 strikes today. We missed a lot of fish. Or the fish missed us. I don't know. I think the fish missed us because we were on them. We were good, but the fish just didn't have no idea what they were doing.
You know what the problem was, Johnny? Those fish are not listening to our radio shows, nor are they reading our articles.
No, obviously, they're ignoring us completely, because if they had read the book, we would have caught a lot of fish on jerkworms and stuff like that, topwater baits even. But obviously, they didn't read up on it, so...
Well, the another thing that I used, which of course is my favorite, and I've caught fish, it doesn't make any difference, don't seem like what time of the year I'm using it, and that's a tube. That's another one that surprises me.
Tube's very deadly this time of year. You would think you could toss that up along them weed lines there and just catch all kinds of fish, but it was one of those weird days where what you think should work didn't work. So, like I said early on in the show, you just got to be patient and eliminate what won't work, and then find what does and stick with it. Just hang in there tough.
Well, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier before we started the show, is the fact that a lot of people would have just said, nope, this is a bad day, and walk off. And figure this, folks, we're talking about it being a bad day, but if we had not found this pattern, within, what did we fish, couple hours?
Couple hours total, yeah.
And within that couple hours, we caught 14 bass and lost probably another good 5.
Yeah, there were more. We probably had a lot of fish that we didn't even know we had. The way they were hitting was so light and indistinct that we probably had fish on that we didn't know we had, because a lot of them would swim right toward us, and sometimes you just don't detect that.
Well, another thing, too, we should mention are the conditions that we were facing. When we first started out during the day, it was very calm. Then the wind came up, but there has been a lot of heavy rain here, and the water's really murkying up, isn't it?
Yeah, the water's dirty, and I'm sure that caused a lot of the short strikes. The fish were just misjudging where the bait was, and I think probably that may be the reason the spinnerbait was more effective, because they had not only the flash but the vibration to hone in on them so that they could catch the bait a lot easier.
And by me using the baby wedge, I not only had that smaller profile, which of course during the spring they feed on smaller baits, but also with that wedge blade, you're getting, even though it has a small blade, you're getting the vibration of a larger blade.
Yeah, that wedge blade is a great invention. That thing really puts out a, I don't know if it's a high pitch frequency or a low pitch. I think high pitch, but it seems to really attract the fish. And I know you've been catching fish on that every time we go out. And I'm going to have to get one. That's, you know, I'm a little bit stubborn, bullheaded sometimes, because I think conventional spinner baits ought to catch fish too. But I'm seeing a real preference for that small bait with the what I call finesse fishing. You know, anything that's less than a half ounce to me is finesse fishing. Because I usually use great big crankbaits and full-size spinner baits. You know, 3/8 is probably the minimum spinner bait, once in a while a quarter, but not very often.
We'll take a break here and we'll be right back, and we'll talk a little bit more about finesse style fishing and something I want to mention about those blade styles, so stay with us. Well, as I said, Johnny, I want to mention something about the blade styles too, because we were talking about that wedge blade. But I had 2 spinner baits on, which I commented on when we took off. 2 of my rods had spinner baits. That's because I've been fishing with these a lot, catching them everywhere, but one was a tandem blade, while the other was just a single spin. And at first, the tandem was actually out fishing the other one.
Yeah, well, they ate it so much they ate the skirt off of it. I couldn't believe it. The skirt kept getting smaller and smaller. Dan said, I think I'm losing my skirt. And then after a little while, it was gone. And you had to go to the single spin then, pretty much.
And it seemed like the single spin worked a little bit better for that pump action.
After we got really situated into what we were doing, it seemed to work real good. There's a big old raccoon over there right beside us. See him over there?
We are out here in the lake, folks, by the way. That's why Johnny see the raccoon. We are not in the studio. So otherwise, people at home would be saying, what's a raccoon doing in the studio?
Yeah, we're right out in the middle of the day, too. You know, we're right in the middle of the afternoon. The thing's walking around.
So we're seeing raccoons, we're catching fish, we're telling people how to catch fish. So this is a little bit different. But one of the things I think we should mention is when the fishing gets tough. They always say the tough gets going, but actually in fishing, I think when the fishing gets tough, you're better off going smaller and finessing.
No, I'm seeing more and more and more of that. You know, the pros on the bass tournament circuits, they preach that a lot, and I think a lot of people just think that's, you know, something they're just telling you. But, you know, Dan and I have years and years of experience, and we're not going to tell you something that's not true. And when things are tough, you do need to downsize, slow down, maybe fish a little deeper, and really concentrate on what you're doing.
And even perhaps sometimes going deeper into the weeds and the brush, because a lot of times after a storm front, the fish, even though they're shallow, people think, well, they took off for that deep area. They might go down a point, but they, a lot of times, and I think Doug Hannon proved this with some of his research, they go deeper into the weeds and just sit there.
I've had that happen to me in a tournament one time. It came a snowstorm, and overnight, we practiced the day before, and the fish were in the weeds. We went out the next morning, and it was snowing that morning when we put the boats in. And this was only in October, so the water temperature and everything was good. But I abandoned the weed bed pattern because the weather changed so drastically. And when weigh-in time came, I had one fish. It was a nice one, 4.5 pounds. But everybody else had a limit of fish, and they took them all out of the back ends of coves that had weeds in them, and they said they were buried in the weeds. And that taught me a valuable lesson.
Well, and Doug's right then. Well, you know, we're running out of time, and I know we could have all sorts of stories for him. So, Johnny, I want to thank you for being with me.
It's always a great time, Dan. Great to be on your show. Great to be out fishing with you. We always have a great time, and it seems like we're always challenged, and we kind of live up to it, or try to.
It sure is, and hopefully some of the folks will stop by and see us on some of our seminars sometimes, because we are, this year, by the way, folks, in 2005, we're going to be at the QCCA show as a team for a couple of days. So until next time, get out there in the water and enjoy a great day of fishing.
Well, hopefully you enjoy that, and that you'll enjoy some of the other radio shows that we're going to be bringing you. They'll be down the line a ways. I'm going to intermingle them with, of course, the Shoot and Plink episodes and the Dan's Fishing Tales whenever we do. No fishing right now, of course. I'm going to be fishing, but so until next time, get out on the water and enjoy a great day.